Jamie Dimon, who even before the election had actually really shifted the way he was talking about Trump. Previously was a huge Trump critic, Democratic donor, all that stuff. And, after seeing the first Trump administration, being like, he gave rich people a giant tax cut. It wasn't so bad. He kind of changed his tone and became much more comfortable with the Trump administration. But the whole tenor of the discussion on inflation has really shifted a lot because obviously, both in the midterms and in the presidential election, voters said their number one issue is inflation. And you can understand why, because having this huge spike in food and fuel prices really is difficult for people who are already living at the ragged edge and struggling to be able to put it all together, especially with the cost of living crisis in general, how expensive housing prices are, et cetera. And, the Trump campaign really focused on, hey, we're going to be the ones who can bring prices down, and the Biden administration failed you with this, et cetera, et cetera. Now that they are taking office, there's a bit of a different tone that is being struck. J.D. Vance was pressed on this by Margaret Brennan on the Sunday shows. Let's take a listen to that.
You campaigned on lowering prices for consumers. We've seen all of these executive orders. Which one lowers prices?
We have done a lot, and there have been a number of executive orders that have caused already jobs to start coming back into our country, which is a core part of lowering prices. More capital investment, more job creation in our economy is one of the things that's going to drive down prices for all consumers, but also raise wages so that people can afford to buy the things that they need. If you look at our slate of executive orders, no, Margaret, prices are going to come down, but it's going to take a little bit of time, right? The president has been president for all of 5 days. I think that in those 5 days, he's accomplished more than Joe Biden did in 4 years. It's been an incredible breakneck pace of activity. We're going to work with Congress. We're, of course, going to have more executive orders, and we're going to try the way that you lower prices is that you encourage more capital investment into our country.
So fair enough that Trump has only been president for 5 days and does not have, complete control over pricing of all things, let alone, eggs, which we're about to talk about specifically. But I think they are making a bet, Sagar. I think they've always made a bet. It just wasn't really foregrounded that people will tolerate some price increases if they can convince them that it's in the overall national interest.
I think that's true.
I think that's their political. I don't actually think that is true. But their economic policy, the two main planks are, the deportations plus tariffs. You will readily admit, anyone who's being honest will readily admit that both of those things are likely, at least in the short to medium term, to lead to price increases. But they're betting that they can tell a story about that that will make people be like, I can manage this and it's quote unquote worth it.
I do think that there is an element to it which is true. So when I go to Japan, there is a guy who's driving the taxi who the taxi driver is wearing white gloves and a suit. And it's a profession, and he takes a lot of pride in that. It's not something that is a stepping stone to go doing something else. That guy gets paid a lot more than any taxi driver in America. It's a good experience for him and for me. It's going to cost more. And so I think that's one of those things where I've been thinking a lot in terms of, like you said, with prices, we have two visions of American society. We can be the one where price is everything, and that means that we're all widgets, we're all consumers. The price of each individual good itself is the sole determinant of my happiness. The price of my stock index going up 22% as opposed to 17% is far more important than whatever might be paid in that interim 5. The Trump administration is offering basically an economic nationalist view, of which almost every other country in the world adopts, from Germany to Japan to any European welfare state, which is, there's going to be some stuff that's going to be more expensive. Some people, though, will get paid more. We will live in a society in which we feel as if we're all a little bit more together. And this is both actually a leftist and a rightist kind of solution to this centrist neoliberal view of GDP. So I basically agree with you. They are going to need to be careful, because what I think the Trump administration's greatest danger is, it was from the first administration, it was the feeling of chaos, lack of process, and things being out of control. And so right now, one of the things about Trump, which is great politically but necessarily bad governmentally, is he'll just throw things at the wall. So for example, in that speech yesterday before Congress, he said, we're going to put tariffs on Taiwan. Now look, philosophically, do I think Taiwan should pay more and all that? Yeah, definitely. But, we're also doing this at a moment where NVIDIA stock just went down by 17%. Yeah. What if it causes a massive stock market crash? And what I would argue is worse is just throwing things out there all the time, which can be great from a negotiation perspective, as we saw with Colombia or whatever. But if you have chaos where things are constantly yo-yoing like back and forth, and people don't feel as if there's a coherent agenda, then of course they're going to default to, well, hey, man, my prices are going up and I don't even feel as if I'm getting anything for this.
And that's the piece, because what you articulated is a at least coherent worldview of, prices aren't going to be and that is the way our society is structured right now. Like Western you are more of a consumer than you are a citizen, right?
Absolutely.
And that's the way our antitrust regulation was reinterpreted to be, as long as people are getting lower prices, then there's no concern about these giant monopolies. They're only to the good. That has been the market logic. The view you explain is, well, no, we're going to raise prices on certain things, but you're going to have a higher wage. The problem is that, especially now in this in this iteration of Trumpism, with Elon Musk really running the show in a lot of respects, that piece about the wages is, that's missing. Because these are people, Elon Musk literally wants to get rid of the entire National Labor Relations Board, right? He wants to be able to bring in H-1B indentured servants to undercut American wages. The Treasury Secretary, Scott Bessent, who just got confirmed, says he doesn't believe in a minimum wage at all, whatsoever. The tariff, the program that has been sort of theoretically floated of, we're going to get rid of income taxes, but we're going to make up for it with tariffs or a consumption tax potentially, that is wildly regressive. That is going to take more out of people's paychecks who are, working class and middle class, et cetera. So that's the part where it really doesn't work. You can't spike prices and people are still getting exploited and have no labor power and have low wages and, getting screwed and worked harder and harder with lower and lower returns, and housing prices are going up, et cetera. You can't, those two pieces politically, they're not going to work ultimately in the long term. So if you're going to invest people in this totally different conception of society of, okay, prices aren't everything, we have strategic and national goals, and we're going to prioritize your wages, that piece has to be there. People have to feel like their wages are going up. And I see much evidence in the other direction that what the actual priority is making it easier to fire striking workers, making it easier to bring in H-1B and H-2B indentured servants to undercut American wages in these various industries, et cetera. So this is kind of like the Steve Bannon versus Elon Musk fight, because Bannon's vision is much more like the one you articulated, and that is not Elon Musk's vision.
That's part of the issue.
Whatsoever.
This is the fundamental tension within Doge, within Elon, within the entire Trump administration. I would even say between JD and Donald Trump's coalition. If you look at all of these people, JD Vance, I will not speak for him. I would never dare to. I'm just saying, I interact with him. I've interviewed him many times, and in those, he's like this. I would think is largely the vision that he would articulate to you. But Donald Trump also is a person of a big coalition. And with Elon, for example, there are already signs of huge fights. So I don't know if you saw this yesterday, but one of the things that Trump said, which has really thrown a wrench into all these reconciliation arguments, is he says he will not sign a bill that cuts a single penny from Medicare or Social Security. And he says that at the very same time that Elon is tweeting about massive entitlement fraud and about how there needs to be a serious review and a rethink. We've seen this also in the OMB and their own theories is about what we want out of visa, like H-1B, H-2B, what all of that will look like. Really, I'm fascinated to see when the next real immigration bill comes across, because right now, all ICE operations are currently about people who are criminals. We haven't even talked about people who are here illegally. But beyond that, even bigger question is like, well, what about the legal system? Like, how many people are being it's a literally zero-sum number in terms of, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, 1 million, where we currently are. What's the number? What type? What is it going to be more H1? Or we're going to increase the allotment, right? That would be a huge subsidy to the technology industry. So I'm very curious to see how that all